Okay, so black women in this video, right? It's about 2 or 3 parts. I'm splicing videos together from several different news channels I watched today. Number one, right? I really had no idea that this snatch and grab thing was going on nationwide. I only thought it was like primarily a West Coast thing. And now the other day, not the other day, today, I found out that the other day, Philadelphia has been going through this for a little bit of time now. And people were dumb enough to record these antics, these looting antics, and get themselves arrested for all types of felonies. Now, the worst part about this video, when you see everything, is I want you to listen to the hatred towards black people by these white folks speaking. And these are people in positions of judges and media who heavily influence the way non-black people think. And once again, like I told you guys, how these white people try to paint black people as the nation's villain and try to paint crime as the overall situation for why people live in poverty and the horrible condition of the country that these political representatives have put us in. So basically they're trying to scapegoat black people for how representatives, the president, vice president, and all the rest of them have run this country into the goddamn ground, to the point where people live in areas and neighborhoods where there are food deserts, no jobs, poor housing, lack of employment, no real way for people to meet the standards of very high rent and market value apartments, right? Childcare is ridiculous, and you can't even trust it these days, because down here where I live, there was a little child that was murdered not too long ago because the daycare that child went to, they were selling drugs out of it, and the child died of a fentanyl overdose. So these are the things that America, the government, and the representatives we vote for do not do anything about. But every time it gets to be about election time and people start running their campaigns to get into whatever office they want, they always try to scapegoat black people as if we're the only ones in America who commit crime. We're the reason why every policy in this country abroad is being defaulted on, and all types of stuff. Like anything wrong with this country, they try to blame it on black people. White people are never held accountable for their white fragility and their white anti-blackness, their white racism towards every other person in this country, against the migrants, the immigrants, against everybody they feel like does not deserve to live a decent life in this country except for them. And then you have these idiotic so-called people of color who are trying to run for office in America as well, doing the same thing, trying to throw black people under the bus as if white people are not the main people in this country who are big-time criminals, robbing from people, writing laws to prevent people from having, creating situations where people have to commit crime and live horrifically in this country. They're the culprits of that. But they always try to act like the only people doing anything is black people. You're going to hear in these videos, right, how they want such harsh punishment for black children, okay? Teenagers, right? Teenagers, as far as the law in this country goes, they can commit crimes and they're supposed to be sealed and thrown out because they're children. Yet you're going to hear these racist white people talk about how these children that have been arrested, this meatball person, how she should never be allowed to work again. She's disgusting because her black body is disgusting to this literally very ugly, undesirably unfortunate looking white male who looked like less than the feces underneath somebody's shoe, decided to talk about this young black girl's body and his opinion openly on public television, as if his opinion of her humanity meant any fucking thing. He sat on that news channel and literally dehumanized a young black girl for being overweight. Sound familiar? Don't it sound like all those other idiots on YouTube constantly dehumanizing and demeaning and belittling black women for their very existence every day? And yet no one comes from the government to make it stop on YouTube, and they allow YouTube to hide behind the 230 law. Listen, black women, this is why when I tell you, do not listen to divestors, especially DZ, when she's telling you to vote for Republicans. This type of ignorant shit is what you got to deal with. Later on in this video, you're going to literally see Al Sharpton speak about the laws and the complete disrespect, right, and disregard Republicans gave the Supreme Court, right, when they told them that the districts you made that eliminate black people's voting ability is not constitutionally legal. Oh, they don't give a damn about that. They want to keep black people from voting because there's so many of us. We can vote their ass out of office. We can almost vote them out of existence in government, period, if we collectively worked towards it. Then you have judges in the end of this video that literally voted against the black women who were giving grants and money to black women in business, because we're already discriminated and we don't get the money that other non-black people get in this country, because white America doesn't want black women or black people, period, to ever succeed in this country. They always want us to be just above the level of slavery, the way we were very, very long. Well, I'm incorrect. I stand corrected. Not a very, very long time ago. But they want us to be at the level of slavery where we never are able to accomplish anything, ever become enfranchised, or have any generational wealth for our families. Because they're just so anti-black, so racially prejudiced, and full of institutionalized racism written into law to constantly oppress and suppress black people. This is what they live for. When you listen to this video, do not hesitate to think about how so many white kids, white people, period, have run amok this year in America. And in the past year, running into churches, shooting up and taking the lives of people, going into supermarkets, taking the lives of people, running amok, doing all types of things, right? But you won't hear any of those white people calling for those white people who committed those seriously heinous crimes to ever be locked up and thrown away the key, the way they suggest things should happen to black people, or made to be put on public display for the crimes they committed. No, they don't want any fairness in this country. They just want to treat black people as if black people are the cause of everything. They want to continue their American apartheid against black folks, which is why black women, you got to vote all these racist people out of office. And when it's time for these judges to go up for re-election, make sure you learn the names of each judge that votes against that black woman company. I forget what it's called. It's called the Fear, something Fear. It'll be in the video. Make sure you find out those judges that vote against that, so that when they come up for re-election, they don't get it. Okay? This is what you got to do. You have to track these people's movements in their position that they hold. You have to watch what they do to the everyday person. And then when it's time to vote for them, hold their ass accountable. Fire them. Fire them on election day. And if a candidate is not good enough for you when you go to vote, I told you before, write in a candidate you feel is sufficient. Take control of your vote. Take control of America. There's more than enough of us black folks to do it. Now I'm going to let y'all watch all this madness after me.
In 2 nights of looting mayhem, at least 61 people have been arrested, countless businesses destroyed. The district attorney's office claims Meatball, whose real name is Deja Blackwell, allegedly used her social media platform to encourage people to engage in looting at several locations during the first night of chaos. She's been charged with 6 felonies.
Everybody must eat. Everybody must eat. Everybody must eat. Record this. Record this. Keep your phones out. Free iPhones. Free iPhones. Free iPhones.
The New York Post claims Meatball is now begging fans for cash after she got bailed out of jail. Blackwell also says she's been traumatized after spending a night there.
I just want to say thanks to everybody that, carry for me. I'm scared. I'm traumatized. Never again in my life. Like, seriously. I'm tired. They put the cheese sandwiches up in the vent just so the air could stop coming in the cell. Like, everybody screaming, walk them home, and they go, bless your girl.
And Meatball's grandmother is also weighing in.
What goes through my mind as a grandmother is I'm very ashamed. I'm very ashamed to see my child there at that time. Number one, she could have gotten hurt. So this is a chance for her to give herself another chance in life, to use whatever influence that they think that she has had on these people, to use it for some type of influence in the city for something positive.
Grandma also wants her to make a public apology. Grandma's not having it. Judge, I too have spent time in jail. But I was there as a young person because my late father was a law enforcement officer, and he took me there as a kid. And take a good look around.
Yeah.
I think I got the Meatball treatment before she got it, because once you've been there, you don't want to go back.
No, you don't want to go back. And the truth is that, 6 felonies, everything
That's
from...
not a joke.
No, it's not. From conspiracy to burglary, criminal mischief, receipt of stolen property, along with disorderly conduct. Look, she was egging people on. And apparently the police found out about this because it was on social media. And I think cops need to be on social media a little more to find out what these people are doing. I have no sympathy for her. Look, if she's scared, by the way, she wants money to, quote, get her toes painted. I think she thinks one night in jail was traumatic. And, if she does, good. Maybe she won't try to encourage people to commit these kinds of crimes. If all it takes is for people to go to jail, we ought to do it universally and not stop pussyfooting around.
Well, listen, she talked a tough game, but then by the time you see her mugshot, there are tears running down her face. Jessica and I spent a little time on her social media today. I want to tell, I went down a rabbit hole, and I was very entertained. For better or for worse, but she has got Meatball merch now. A whole section with her mugshot. She's pulling a Donald Trump on this thing.
She said she was traumatized by jail. I was traumatized by Meatball's Instagram.
But that didn't stop us from spending
naked
time
all
there.
over Instagram.
But we couldn't. I couldn't pull away from it. I couldn't pull away from it.
She's disgusting. I'm so ashamed. I'm more ashamed than Grandma Meatball of
Are you?
Meatball,
That's
and we aren't
shame.
even related. I'm just surprised that someone with the nickname Meatball has gotten herself into trouble. This is not an innocent Meatball. She's not just documenting this like a reporter or a citizen journalist. She's glamorizing it. She's doing the color commentary. We gotta eat. I looked at Meatball. She's had enough to eat. Now, Grandma Meatball needs to give her a whooping, because at first I thought Grandma had her head on straight, and then I think Grandma could be tougher. And if she needs money for bail or the bondsman, she should ask Biden-Harris, because we know they like to bail out the rioters. Selling mugshot tees is smart, so you can tell Meatball has a little capitalist instinct. Yeah. It's like the Trump deal. That's now for sale for $50.
Hoodies,
Meatball.com. I'm just sickened that there's 60 arrests, and these were not children. A lot of these were adults.
They were.
So you're a young black man or woman in Philadelphia, and now you have a probably felony conviction. You're never going to get a job after that. And these corporate spots are bending over backwards to give people jobs. and you can get in these companies and you get promoted and you got a great life. Now, I'm not so sure. And it's too bad because they're lowering the expectations for society. If you have the world ahead of you and you're 18, 19, and your family tells you, you know what, best thing you got is probably to loot a liquor store, you know, that sounds like a good weekend. That's not ever going to get you out of where you are right now. We have to raise expectations because right now they're about as low as the basement.
Well, here's what a little bit more of what Meatballs had to say in the wake of this. Whatever I got to do to remain humble and live a better life, I will. I will never see jail again. Harold, do you think that Meatball has a promising future? Well, she is a capitalist. We pointed that out.
I pray that she learns from this. I think there's something to be found humorous in any and everything. But I was pleased to see her grandmother say what she said, because my grandmother, my mom, my dad would be ashamed of me if I were to do this. I would have probably wanted to stay in jail for a couple days instead of going home to my parents, because of the kind of accountability I would have gotten at home. The other issue is these retail stores, and I hope, Judge, that they're able to change laws in some of these places. They ought to be able to have armed guards at these places, and I think that the insurance companies ought to work with them so they don't get in trouble for this. Right. This is unacceptable. We said this around this table. Greg has been probably the loudest and most constructive advocate about this for a while, but this is in your hometown. This is unbelievable that we continue to see this day after day after day. All of the network morning shows, the cable morning news shows, all start with these smash and grabs. And now, we are with this young lady, and I hope she, it's capitalism, so she can make a little money off whatever she wants to make a little money off of. But I hope she learned from this, and I hope people who are influenced by her, I hope they listen to her, and I hope they don't do this either again. I hope they don't ever do this, or if they're doing it continually, I hope they stop doing it as well.
Well, Greg, I mean, Jesse worries about the felony convictions because that can stain you for life. It's really tough to get past that.
It should.
Well, but she's so young, and a lot of these people are young. But here's the deal. I'm not sure in Philly, with the prosecutorial framework the way it's working right now, that these kids will have felonies.
No, they probably won't. I mean, there needs to be an element of public shaming. When you loot an area, you should be returned to that area, and you should be forced to wear a very, obvious jumpsuit, and you should be cleaning and repairing the places that you destroy. We don't do that. We should do that. She says she's sorry, but you can't be sorry about an activity that you're capitalizing on. If you were truly sorry, you wouldn't be selling merchandise, or if you would, maybe you would be giving the money to people who need it. How soon, however, she is kind of charming before she gets a seat on The View, because I think she'd fit in really well there. But the thing about her never wanting to go to jail again, that is really an important piece to this, because we don't send people to jail anymore for that experience. And like you said, through your father, you saw jail. We grew up watching Scared Straight. People saw prison and they said, I ain't going back there. We live at a time where no cash bail has eliminated that possibility, so that people just, I can take $900, I get out, I get released. I never actually get inside. You need to get these people inside. You need to get the suspect to learn what it is like to be there. This is a microcosm of what's happening in our society right now. We're incentivizing bad behavior, and we're removing disincentives for bad behavior, because now you get rewarded. She acted like she was returning from war. Thank you, everybody. She was like a ticker tape parade on Instagram. The other thing too is I gotta, when you're looking, when you think about, okay, we just need to raise the bar and talk to these kids or whatever, they might all be lost causes, because a lot of these people are victims of our public education system. They're mindless and untethered to the real world. The public education system is producing these individuals by the thousands.
And the parents. You don't think she should get a second chance? I'm thinking, look,
definitely. But I worry that we lose generation. If you don't get them between the ages of 8 and 15, you don't get them. And that's the problem. We saw that during the clampdown, and we saw it during, when we look at the teachers' unions, we're not helping any of these kids. So this is what they consider to be fun and rewarding entertainment. And it worked for a segment.
I don't think I would work well in jail myself. I would want the judge to come with me. Lay down the law.
You can read from Women of the Bible Speak.
I will lead a Bible study. Should I end up
getting sex changes to serve time with you, Shannon?
They will all be invited to the Women of the Bible Speak Bible study that I will hold in jail if I go. Okay, up next, a liberal activist says the Senate dress code that has Fetterman putting on a suit can actually hurt the transgender community. We'll explain.
For being overly partisan. This week, a commission of lawmakers, including 5 Republicans and just 2 Democrats, passed a 5th redistricting plan after negotiations held largely behind closed doors. What's your take on this latest proposal, and why has the process dragged on for so long?
Well, you're exactly right, Reverend, that what you are seeing all across the country is a struggle over representation with big, big implications for the outcomes of elections, for racial fairness, and many other things. In Ohio, the state Supreme Court has struck down the maps over and over and over again, and the legislature, which basically controls this commission, has simply ignored what the state Supreme Court has done. Those of us who care about fair maps, we're trying again, but it may well be the case that the answer has to come from voters through a ballot initiative to create a strong and independent redistricting commission. And interestingly, one of the people who's pushing for that is the former Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court, who is a Republican.
Wow. Now, also this week, the Supreme Court rejected a second attempt by Alabama Republicans to use a congressional map with just one majority black district. The court ruled 3 months ago the map violated the Voting Rights Act. Both rulings from the Roberts Court were a bit of a surprise, given the Chief Justice was instrumental in gutting the Voting Rights Act a decade ago. Is this a change of positions from this conservative court?
Well, it's hard to know. You're exactly right. It was a big surprise because John Roberts has made a career-long crusade out of demolishing the Voting Rights Act, and especially the part of the Voting Rights Act that he then upheld. The Alabama legislature did something, unfortunately, that is similar to what the Ohio legislature has done and is reminiscent of what we saw in the 1950s in the South. Massive resistance. It just ignored what the Supreme Court said. Well, it went right back up to the Supreme Court, and they said, no, you really have to do it. If Alabama does redraw the maps and create another congressional district likely to be represented by a black member of Congress, we're seeing this also in other states, in Louisiana and elsewhere, and this will mean more representation and again could have a significant impact in this election.
And the flagrant disregard for the Supreme Court. I mean, it reminded me when I was a kid of Alabama Governor George Wallace standing in the schoolhouse door. I mean, it's like Alabama all over again, saying they're not going to listen to the courts or anything that gets in the way of their racial decisions. But given Alabama rulings, I'd like to get your thoughts on 2 other similar cases. This week, a federal trial opened examining whether Florida Governor Ron DeSantis violated the Constitution by deliberately dismantling a district that would have favored black candidates. And when the Supreme Court opens a new term on Monday, the docket will include a case alleging some 30,000 black voters were illegally drawn out of a South Carolina district now represented by Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Are you feeling more optimistic how these cases might play out at the federal level?
Well, I do hope that the ruling by the Supreme Court, again, a big surprise, will give some courage to these judges all over the country to stand up for voting rights, to stand up for equality. And that has been happening. That has been very encouraging. In Florida, DeSantis pushed this map through over the objections of the Florida Republican legislature, who thought it was unfair. So there's a lot of evidence coming out in this trial about the political motivations in what DeSantis was doing. It's a big test for the courts. Right now, the Supreme Court stood up this past week. And it's also really important, if we say we're for the rule of law, it has to apply when courts rule that maps are racially gerrymandered, when they're unfair, and these legislatures can't just thumb their noses at the courts. It's a pattern we're seeing, but it's part of this extraordinary struggle between now and November 2024 and beyond for the shape of American democracy. The courts haven't always gotten it right. They haven't always stood up when they should. But when they do, it's really important that these political legislatures follow the rule of law.
Speaking of 2024, before I let you go, Michael, your organization not only fights and tracks gerrymandering, but also voter suppression efforts that continue across the country, as well as schemes to interfere with the election process, including the counting and certification of the vote. As you well know, the front runner for the Republican presidential nomination is facing felony criminal charges for allegedly trying to overturn the 2020 election. How concerned are you right now about what will happen in 2024?
Well, the most important thing that can happen is that we get ready. You might remember the election deniers didn't do very well in 2022. They didn't obstruct the elections, and a lot of them actually lost their races for Secretary of State because election officials were ready, because law enforcement actually stepped up to help protect voting rights, and because voters understood what was going on. We know that there's going to be a huge effort to try to subvert the elections in 2024. It goes beyond just what the candidate at the top of the ticket is saying, but he's now got tens of millions of people believing the big lie. Those of us who care about democracy have to stand up for the truth, which is that our elections are fair, and we need to make sure that we're all standing behind that.
Michael Waldman, thank you for being with us. Up next, my final thoughts. Don't go anywhere. I want to react to today's federal appeals court decision against the Fearless Fund. Today's ruling effectively halts the fund's vital work empowering black female entrepreneurs, while the courts consider a civil rights case brought against them by far-right legal activists intent on chipping away at affirmative action and diversity efforts in America's boardrooms, on college campuses, and even at our military academies. On Tuesday, I traveled to Atlanta in my capacity as head of National Action Network to stand with the leaders of the Fearless Fund when it seemed as if they would be able to continue their operations during the proceedings, ruled by a district judge that they could continue. It's outrageous, a venture meant to address our country's past injustices with the backing of many respected Fortune 500 companies, stand accused of racial discrimination. It's even more maddening. Their efforts are being suspended before the allegations against them have been considered in court. This decision was the 11th Circuit 3-judge panel, 2 appointed by Donald Trump. My thoughts with the good people at the Fearless Fund tonight, as well as many aspiring business leaders for whom the fund was a lifeline, is that even though we may face an uncertain future, we must keep fighting. We will keep fighting. That does it for me. Thanks for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for another live hour of Politics Nation. Alicia Menendez with American